We are slaying monsters.
Don't let the ghosts and the ghouls disturb you, darling.
So I mentioned before that the book that was my primary source for this series, Raymond Fowler's book, was donated by a listener, and I got a response from the listener saying how disappointed that they were that we are debunking everything about the book, because apparently the listener sent it to us being convinced that they were like, this would be the thing that we couldn't debunk. So this is for you.
Sorry,
and thank you.
And thank you. Yes,
listener.
thank you very much.
We love you.
But yeah. Unfortunately, this just involves Raymond Fowler and MUFON and a bunch of flawed practices, and it's the way it goes sometimes,
It's interesting. I'll always be fascinated by how two different people can look at the same thing and see two different things.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
It's like the blue and black dress. Do y'all remember that?
Yes.
Viral from
Hell yeah.
2013, 2014, somewhere in there.
Katie,
Yeah.
which one did you see?
It was blue and black to me.
It was blue and black to you. EJ, do you remember?
Blue and black.
Really? I always saw white and gold.
Yeah, that was weird.
And-
You were a
Wow.
weirdo.
And I'm very proud of this, because when I got really mad about it, I was working in a film studio at the time in Philly, and there was a huge debate, and of course we were all like image nerds, so we were all defending our stance really hard. And so the colorist there and I loaded it up into Photoshop and took samples of the colors, and the colors sampled at white and gold. And I was like, haha, you're wrong.
Wow, they did?
Yes, they did. Yeah.
Hold on,
yeah,
I have to Google this dress again.
It's an optical illusion. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, the image itself, like the pixels of the image are truly white and gold. So I saw the image as the actual pixels of how it was presented, even though that's wrong, because apparently the dress was blue and black, like in the image. But I saw it literally, and everybody else saw it based around the flawed flash, which is what it was. It was a flash that went off that blew out the colors, that altered the colors. Yeah.
I'm looking at the original photo, and I have no fucking clue how someone would see it as blue and as white and gold.
You know what's really nuts? My eyes just did this crazy thing. I Googled the dress. I pulled it up. I said, that's black and blue. And then I went down and I looked at other images. I looked at like the gold images and everything. And then I went back up and looked at it. And now all I can see is white and gold.
That's
Really?
crazy. Wow.
Now
Wow.
it's
That
white
is-
and gold to me.
That is
You have
crazy.
you have adaptable eyes.
I do. I'm a pushover. Do you
They've-
see this? This looks white and gold to me.
That looks white and gold to me.
Now
Yeah.
it does. When
Yeah,
I pulled
it
it up,
always
it
does.
didn't look like that. Anyway.
Maybe the aliens implanted adaptable eyes into you, EJ.
I'm impressionable.
Oh, okay. I'm looking at another photo, and I see it now. But I'm still right. The dress is blue and black.
You
Like,
are
literally.
literally correct. If you went to buy the dress, it would be blue and black. Yes.
Yeah. And quite dark blue and black, not faded. Anyway, we've gotten off topic.
Anyway,
Yes.
holy shit.
Oh my
yes.
God, we are slaying monsters. We are not a fashion podcast.
From 10 years ago or something, yeah.
Yeah.
A dress that is very much not cool anymore. Don't go buy it.
Yeah. Out of style a bit. What will never go out of style is talking about the paranormal, though, I will say. If I don't say so myself.
That's right.
Today, we are going to talk about the Allagash Four. We're going to wrap it up. We
Yes.
got Maddie J.
Yo.
We got Katie.
Hi.
And I'm EJ. Take it away.
All right. Yeah. We're talking about the Allagash Abductions, and we're going to bring it home. We're going to learn the ultimate unraveling of this story. So in our last episode, MUFON investigator Raymond Fowler conducted a series of hypnotic regression sessions on the Allagash Four. That's 4 men who claim to have been the victims of an alien abduction in 1976. Fowler was amazed to find that all 4 men's stories lined up and described the same scenario after some tactful leading by the hypnotist. Now, the problem, of course, was that neither Fowler nor his partners were trained in mental health or hypnosis. And even if they were, the practice of hypnotic memory regression is flawed and dangerous. The Allagash Four all claimed to have the same experience because Fowler was accidentally imprinting it in their minds. And in the process, he convinced them that they had not only been abducted by aliens, but were the victims of invasive, otherworldly medical procedures aboard a spacecraft. Encouraged by his findings, Fowler's next intention was to explore Jim and Jack Wiener's most modern alien visitations. See, you might remember both men claimed that they had memories of nocturnal encounters with the same beings that abducted them from the Allagash Wilderness. More likely, they were victims of sleep paralysis and suffering from hypnagogic hallucinations, but Fowler didn't really take that into consideration. To him, it's all just aliens. So, during the summer of 1989, Fowler and his partner, MUFON correspondent and high school teacher Tony Constantino, conducted more regression sessions on Jack Wiener. These were focused on his more recent encounters, the ones where the aliens allegedly visited Jack and his wife Mary at their home in Vermont. You'll remember that Mary was also very skeptical of these regressions. And after Jack's initial regression, looked at the men and said, "Are you guys for real?"
I love Mary.
Yeah.
We need more Mary.
We do.
More Marys coming up here.
Good.
So Jack described the textbook perfect sleep paralysis episode. He said, "I see one," meaning an alien. "I see one and it's right there, right next to my bed. I see a dark figure that has a strange face, not like our face. It has big eyes. 2 big eyes and a big head, and it's darkish, and there's a light behind it coming in the door." So this is the standard sleep paralysis that we hear about all the time. You're stuck, paralyzed in bed. There's something looming over you, looking at you. Again, I had that exact experience myself. The aliens allegedly led Jack and his wife Mary out of their house, and they levitated up into a brightly lit alien spacecraft. While they were there, the aliens took Jack into an examination room and they prodded him with a vibrating rod-like instrument. Then they put him in a chair that conformed to his body, kind of like a big memory foam chair. And they performed some more experiments before sending him back to his bedroom with Mary. Jack recalled specifically that their dog didn't respond during any of these events. It just kept sleeping on the floor of their bedroom, which seemed very strange to him. But now, Fowler thought he had the opportunity to confirm these events because, remember, he first got interested in this case because there were 4 people. And so to him, that was 4 people who could allegedly, anyway, confirm what happened in the spacecraft. If he put them under hypnotic memory regression and they all had the same memory, well, then he knew for sure that it happened, at least according to him, right? So Fowler thought, if we can put Mary under hypnosis and she has the same experience as Jack, then we'll know that they were both abducted. Mary, however, proved to be a difficult subject. First, she had some difficulty relaxing to even start the session. Even after Tony's prompting her, they hit a brick wall and she said, quote, "This is awful. Nothing is happening, Tony." They even tried to get her to hypnotically forget Tony Constantino's name, but that failed too because this isn't a fucking movie, and that's not how any of this shit works. So twice, she failed to be traditionally hypnotized, the way that had been successful for all of the Allagash Four.
Why do you think it was? Well, actually, it wasn't really all that successful for Chuck Rack.
No, it wasn't. In fact, if you remember from last time, Chuck Rack was the guy who he kind of confirmed what happened, and then later on he wrote a letter to Raymond Fowler and was like, "I'm a little worried that I was just piggybacking off everybody else's testimony."
Yeah, there's a really powerful persuasion aspect of this, I think, that Chuck is sort of proving out happened. Because there is something about like, well, all your friends said this, so, you know, it happened, right?
Right.
Okay, there's a little bit of like a pressure there. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's the same sort of like we talked before about the medically appropriate way to try to put people under hypnosis. It's like you have to be completely alone. You have to make sure that you're not talking about anything beforehand, so you're not suggesting anything, like all of these things. Even then, it's still like a little, you know, perhaps questionable, but there are like things you're supposed to do to keep the room clean, so to speak. And I feel like it's similar to also equally a sort of problematic tactic, but like when investigators and police are talking to suspects properly, you don't suggest things to people. Both the cops shouldn't be suggesting or saying like, hey, your friend said this. That's why it's a problem that cops are allowed to lie to people. But also like, you don't want, if the suspects did do it, you don't want them to be able to like join in together and like create the same story and suggest things to each other. And I feel like here it's the same thing. People are like, oh yeah, maybe it did happen like that. Or I don't want to make all my friends seem crazy, so I'm going to go along with it. These types of situations happen over and over and over again in all forms of life, you know, like not just alien abductions.
Yeah.
It's like very natural human response to try and like go with the story.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, especially when you care about the people who are relating the story and you don't want them to feel alone. You don't want to invalidate their experiences. Absolutely.
And you also were there experiencing something weird. So you're like, in a certain way, there's a point where you're sort of like, well, I don't remember that, but maybe that did happen. Like It was really weird what we all experienced on the lake, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And no one of all four of them, there was not a single person who denied that they got in their canoe, lost some time in the middle of the lake, and saw a strange glowing orb. Everybody says that absolutely happened. Now, we know that was Mercury, but you know, they still lost time. They still spent an awful lot of time staring at it, came back and their fire was burned out. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But Katie, I'm glad that you brought up the topic of police interrogation, because that was the next turn for the MUFON men. They took some time to regroup, and they decided that Mary must be too emotionally frightened by her experience to be hypnotized in the traditional way.
Oh, fuck that, man.
It was just too scary for her to recall that.
So wait a second. Of all these fucking people, the four guys and the one woman, the woman who is the most steady, who says this is not working, who says, I know your name, Tony, it's not working, she's the fucking hysterical one. And all four of these guys who are, I'll leave Chuck Rack out of this, all three of these guys who are just making emotional shit up, who are actually being forced to come up with these things by Fowler, really, or coerced.
Correct.
They're not the emotional ones?
Also, why would she be the most scared? She's the one that has had the least amount of experience. Like, the other ones, if you're going to go with the, like, oh, they're too scared, they're too traumatized to talk about it argument, wouldn't it be them, not her?
Yeah. But she's a woman, Katie. You know how...
I suspect that that's probably a big part of it. Yeah.
She's a woman and also extremely inconveniently doesn't believe them.
She's not cooperating. Yeah.
She's like, I've seen too many men bullshit in my life.
Yeah, exactly. She reads that from a mile away.
I know.
So Tony Constantino tried a different tactic on her. He used a pendulum attached to a string that Mary held in one hand. Tony then proceeded to ask her a series of yes or no questions, and according to him, the pendulum would swing up and down if the answer was yes, and left or right if the answer was no.
Yay, I love this stuff.
Now,
I was going to say this. I fucking hate on ghost shows and shit when they use that kind of thing.
Yes.
I'm like, please just use the little electronic beepy thing. Like, that feels more believable to me than your stupid pendulum. I'm like, slight vibrations in your hand could just be moving that thing all over the place. Anyway.
I love it.
I love when they break out the dowsing rods and they're like, they're crossing.
I love it. I love this shit.
Okay.
Tony Constantino chose to do this because, according to Raymond Fowler in his book, this was a technique that was used by law enforcement.
No.
Yes.
Since when?
Yes. This was a technique that was occasionally used by law enforcement to determine if someone was lying.
That's fun. That's great. Send him to jail. The pendulum went left to right. Send him to prison for 30 years.
We've never moved beyond witch trials.
We really
pretend we
haven't.
have.
I
but-
know. I was thinking that. This is so medieval. Oh my God.
Okay. So,
Does she float?
Exactly. Oh my God.
finally.
Mary should have fucked. Sorry about one more thing. Mary should have fucked with them. She should have been like, anyway.
Yeah, swing it all over the place, smack Tony in the head with it.
Yeah.
Oh man. So finally, they got the result that they were looking for. When asked if she saw a UFO that night in question, the pendulum swung up and down. Yes. Now, we've talked about the ideomotor effect before, and that's when your body makes very minute, unconscious moves, even though you're trying to stay still. It's long been the cause behind things like Ouija boards and dowsing rods, table turning. But I think it's also important to point out that priming influences the ideomotor effect too. Basically, if you hand someone a pendulum on a string and tell them, hold still, but then you also say, oh, it might swing this way or this way, you are implying in a very subtle way, a very subtle suggestion that it will respond, which engages that ideomotor effect and that response from the holder. Priming is such a critical part of all of this. You know, it's what Fowler is doing with all of these guys too. You know, you have Jim who has a abduction experience. Fowler talks to him. Jim comes in expecting to recount it. He does. Then Jim tells his brother Jack. Jack goes under hypnosis as well. He also expects to have the same experience. He does. It's all priming.
Right. And I know you're probably going to talk about this, but it's making me think of the observer bias thing, also known as the Hawthorne effect. I had not heard of this until I was looking into it, but it refers to the fact that people behave differently when they know they're being watched. And so I think that's just part of it. It's like, I read about it. It's like why they put dummy cameras at traffic lights, because it makes people behave better at traffic lights, things like that.
Oh, yeah. It's also the panopticon. It's the theory of the panopticon, which is a theory from this 1800s guy, Jeremy Bentham. But basically, it says that like a prison that's a circular prison that has a tower in the center of it where the guard can see everyone, that eventually you don't need anyone in the guard tower because people regulate themselves because they assume they're being watched, whether or not they actually know they are. Yeah. So, I mean, it's basically the observer phenomenon. Like you self-regulate based on thinking that you might be observed, whether or not you actually are being observed.
Yeah. In a paper published in Frontiers in Psychology, researchers Yoon Kyung Shin, Sung Gyo Choi, and Oh Sang Kwan wrote, because the players, in this case the person holding the piece, do not experience a sense of agency in achieving the consequence due to the absence of a conscious intention, they often misattribute the movement of the indicator to an external spiritual force. Basically, because you don't believe you're moving the pendulum, it must be some other subconscious force that is moving it, that a ghost or the truth that's flowing through you or whatever. But it's actually your ideomotor effect, which was primed to move the pendulum because of the observer bias, which we've exactly been talking about. Now people are watching you. They expect it to move. You expect it to move. Therefore, it moves. And because you don't believe that you're moving it, it must be that external force.
Yeah, the trick is making them believe that they don't have agency.
Right. Exactly.
That's the magic trick.
Exactly. The MUFON men are expecting this thing to move. They expect that Mary was abducted. Everybody's primed to interpret these false positives as true responses. And the pendulum is just a convenient tapestry then, right? They paint their own expectations on it. Either way, Fowler and his partners now had what they considered proof that aliens had abducted not only Jack Weiner, but his wife, Mary, as well. Continuing to follow this thread, because this is what Fowler does. He just grabs that little morsel and takes it as far as he possibly can. They turn their attention to the other abductees of the Allagash Four. Was it possible that they also experienced close encounters after that incident in the woods? The answer is yes, of course.
I mean, you're asking me and EJ. Our answer is no.
Yes.
I'm a little disappointed that he didn't try with the dog, actually. I feel like he could have gotten somewhere with that. So in subsequent interviews, Fowler discovered that both of the Weiner twins saw a white ghost when they were children. He quickly concluded that was actually an alien that the boys misinterpreted as a ghost. Because according to Fowler, many abductees have a history of close encounters, and they register these early incidents as ghosts or spirits before they understand, oh, those are actually aliens.
Wow. So a paranormal researcher sees a ghost, a MUFON person sees an alien, and a Christian fundamentalist sees an angel.
Pretty much. Yeah. Yeah.
And a skeptic sees the light is shining weirdly through the curtain.
Right. Exactly. This goes back to our early conversation of people seeing the same thing and interpreting different outcomes.
This is one of my favorite things in Fortean research, though, is when you have someone who's dead set on their particular set of beliefs, and they try to take the other shit and interpret it through that lens. So Fowler, I don't actually know what Fowler's opinion on actual ghosts is, but it's easier for him to say, no. Ghosts aren't real, or at least most ghosts aren't real. They're actually aliens. But that way I can still recontextualize all the ghost reports as alien reports, and now they make sense to me. It's funny the way people do that. You see other ufologists do this with like Sasquatch, and they're like, oh yeah, Sasquatches they're just a race of alien species that come from UFOs, right? So more hypnotic memory regression followed, with Fowler taking the boys back to their experiences with Harry the Ghost. That's what they called him.
Was this like a recurring thing in their childhood? They named the ghost. Was this like...
Apparently. Yes, apparently.
Okay.
And I don't know, this is one of those things where I don't think that they saw a ghost, like an actual ghost. I don't know what they saw. They were young kids, and it's been at this point like 30 years since they saw this thing.
Like maybe they did think they saw something once, or even saw something and made it into their friend, and then Harry the Ghost became their like imaginary friend, like, and then they convinced themselves it was real. I mean, like kids do crazy shit.
Yeah.
all the time because they have
Absolutely.
such good imaginations, and we haven't trained them and like contoured their imaginations yet. So
Yeah. You may remember that Harry the Ghost was white. That quickly got recontextualized as being gray, not white, because that would fit the alien narrative better. And Harry apparently came from a flying ball of light. All of this under Fowler's analysis and suggestion. So, to the surprise of no one, similar instances could also be rooted out of Charlie Foltz and Chuck Rack's consciousness as well. And so suddenly, this wasn't just an event in Allagash. Fowler thinks that he's cracked open a 4-pack of lifelong alien experiences. I guess some of this feels compelling taken in chunks, but remember, over a decade prior, Alvin Lawson proved that you can implant false alien abduction memories in people and get the exact same story as those who claim they were actually abducted. None of it's real, and it's all Fowler yes-anding himself into this great big conspiracy.
Must have been fun for him, though.
I'm sure every single session he went home and he was like, oh my God, everything is so deep now. It's so fascinating, you know. He was like his own little Fox Mulder there.
Yeah.
Deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole every time.
That's the one thing I'll say about people like him, is that I think that hardcore believers in this stuff probably have a lot more fun than skeptics.
They probably do.
I think it's a blast. And
they're having a grand old time over there, just making shit up.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm just like, I love that for them, and I wish that they had just like written a novel, It's like you'd make a great sci-fi novelist. Like you could have just, or make a movie. It's just, see, this is why we need art in school, people.
Yeah. Encourage
people
this
need
stuff.
outlets for their creativity.
Yes.
Not content with just the Allagash Four accounts, Fowler turned his attention to physical evidence as well. And like most things he does, this is so close to true scientific rigor, because his thinking is right. If I can find physical evidence that corroborates these reports of abductions, I can strengthen my case. Cool. Like, I support that. I think that's great. He had done this previously in the Betty Andreessen case. She claimed, among other things, that the aliens had implanted some kind of spiked ball in her nose. This is one of the threads that we pick up with a lot of alien abductions. Famous contactee and author Whitley Strieber also said he had alien devices implanted in his ears during his abduction. Those turned out to be collagen deposits, meaning that he just kind of had excess cartilage in his ears. Despite numerous quote-unquote objects being removed from alleged abductees' bodies, Joe Nickel points out that they are not only very diverse in appearance, but they're generally very mundane things that are allegedly implanted in people. You'd think that, like, if you were abducted by an alien and they were tagging you or tracking you, or who knows why they would put something in your body, they go to all this trouble of snatching you up, performing laparoscopic surgery on you. You'd think they'd do more than just stick a piece of glass or a speck of metal in your skin, right? Mm-hmm. But whenever we recover objects from alleged abductees, none of them are anything other than like normal earthly objects. There's never anything that seems to be transmitting a radio signal or anything like that. Fowler set out to find physical signs of surgery on his interviewees. Jack Weiner was quick to give him a hand, or rather a leg, by claiming that he had a strange lump on his leg around his tibia. That turned out to be a benign tumor, which he had surgically removed. And when Fowler asked him about it, Jack said that his surgeon had sent a biopsy from that tumor to the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology for examination. And that struck Fowler as being kind of strange, because now you have the military examining this tumor. What's the reason behind that? Is it that the Air Force was interested in it because it was part of alien abduction? Do you have any guesses why?
Was he a veteran?
He was not a veteran.
Oh, okay.
That's a good guess.
No idea.
It's a really simple one.
Was it close? Was it the closest facility?
No, the lab was free. Other labs would have charged them for the biopsy.
No way.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, but why was it free if he's not a veteran? Anyway, that's a very simple explanation. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
As with many things, it just comes down to corporations being cheap.
Okay.
But now Fowler was curious, and he did what he always did, and he put Jack under hypnosis and asked him to recall when the tumor first appeared. Guess what? It happened during one of his now numerous alien abductions when an alien allegedly inserted a needle into his leg. And so Fowler became convinced there must be physical signs of alien abduction on these 4 men. And
all of them, not
all
just...
of them.
Okay.
All of them, because they've all been abducted. And he started looking, and he found exactly what he was looking for. When Fowler examined Jack, he found the sole of his foot was dry and cracked, almost as if it was burned. Fowler said it looked like it had been burned. Jack didn't think it was a bacterial infection like athlete's foot because, according to him, quote, "I never get that. I don't go to gyms."
Okay, that's not the only way you can get athlete's foot, but...
Yeah. Athlete's foot doesn't mean that you're an athlete and only athletes get it. Tennis elbow isn't just restricted to tennis players. Bird flu doesn't only happen in birds.
Well, they need to change
Right,
the
guy.
names then because they're very confusing.
I mean, famously, I know I can attest to tennis elbow not only happening in tennis players because I did exactly 0 athletic activity when I was in 8th grade and I got tennis elbow from talking on the phone too long.
Oh my God. I love it.
I spent so much time on the phone as an 8th grader that I got tennis elbow
I don't know.
God.
from holding the phone up to my ear.
Oh my God. When will the Olympics accept that gossiping is a sport?
Yes.
When?
But Raymond Fowler. Time for more hypnosis, guys. He put Jack back under hypnosis, and sure enough, Jack recounted that the aliens were playing with his feet. That was, of course, taken as confirmation that his experiences were real and that strange burned skin on his feet were actually the result of his abduction. Or, following the real threads of all of this, Jack didn't believe he could get athlete's foot because he wasn't an athlete, therefore it must have been the aliens. Continuing to follow this reasoning, Fowler asked Charlie Foltz and Chuck Rack to examine their bodies and look for unusual marks. Charlie noted that he had a scar on his left leg and Chuck had a mark near his spine. Neither man remembered what caused these marks. Fowler decided that they were further evidence, and, let's be honest, they could be anything. Sometimes shit just shows up on your body and you don't remember it happening.
Mm-hmm. All the time. I bump into shit all the time.
Yeah.
And then later I'll be like, what's that from? I'm like, probably ran into a wall. Let's be honest. Like...
How many walls do you run into, Katie?
No, it's like edges of things.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Bump into an edge of something.
Yeah, like bump into door corners or like my peripheral vision is weird. Like it's fine, but it's not great.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I bump into things a lot. And then I'm like, oh, I have a bruise. It's like, why? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Also, how old are these men?
They were in their, I think they were in their 30s.
Okay. I was just going to say, and this is less like a physical, like obvious thing, like a dry foot or something like that. But if you're like, oh, my body's weird, it's like, no, you're just old. You slept incorrectly and now your shoulder doesn't work. And that has nothing to do with aliens, just has to do with the fact that you're old now.
Yeah. That's not really in the book, but I do wonder how many times, because they were probably coming up on their late 30s, early 40s around the time that all of these investigations were happening. And that is about the time where you start to wake up and be like, oh man, I feel a little funny in my shoulder or my neck or something. I wonder how much of that was then misinterpreted as like, oh, I was on the spaceship and they were fucking with my neck. Yeah.
I don't know. Once you're down that rabbit hole. Anyway, we've gone too far afield. Keep going. What's going to happen next?
Well, the abductee that suffered the most trauma, at least the most medical trauma, was Jim Weiner. When consulting his doctor, Jim Weiner's doctor, Raymond Fowler learned more about that initial fall that started Jim down this strange journey. He'd been experiencing atypical chest pain and numbness in his left side. When he was examined, the doctor explained that this was very typical of TLE, or the temporal limbic epilepsy, likely suffered during his head trauma. Fowler got in touch with Harvard Medical's Department of Neurology, who had been overseeing Jim Weiner's case for the last 5 years. And Dr. Bruce Price wrote him back and said, quote, Jim has a condition called temporal limbic epilepsy, which can cause a host of psychic symptoms. Included among these are déjà vu and Jamis vu, dissociative states with out-of-body experiences, unprovoked panic and chest pain, and hallucinations. It is possible that Jim's reported nightmares and dreams may be TLE-induced.
Wow, poor Jim. What a smoking gun that is.
Yeah.
How long has he had that again? Can you just remind me?
5 years.
Was it before Allagash or after?
After. Almost a decade after.
Okay, so he came down with TLE after Allagash, 10 years after Allagash.
Just about, yeah.
Okay.
But that's when he started talking to a doctor, right?
Yep. Yeah, and the whole story goes, they were camping in Allagash in 1976. Jim fell off a ladder in the mid-'80s.
Got it. Okay, right.
Went to his doctor. Well, Jim fell off a ladder in the mid-'80s, went to his doctor because you do, right? You were scared about that, and he had been having this chest pain and stuff. Doctors said, start keeping a journal of anything weird that happens. Jim starts keeping a journal in which he charts his sleep paralysis and hypnagogic hallucinations. Then Jim gets referred, not by the Harvard medical doctor, but by a different doctor to look up John Mack's research into UFOs, and that leads Jim down that route, which leads him to Raymond Fowler, and then we get where we are now.
Okay, thank you for the timeline again. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, that was helpful. And it sounds like now this Harvard doctor is just reiterating what was happening all along, which is, I mean, if I'm being very reductive about the timeline, Jim got an actual illness that causes symptoms that are similar to the things that people say you get when you have alien abductions.
Right.
And then he convinced all of his friends, not in a malicious way, that they also were abducted by aliens, with the assistance of Raymond Fowler, like leading them down that path too. So that sounds like what we're dealing with here.
Yeah. Katie basically just summed up the last 4 hours of this podcast in 2 sentences. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, and look, from that, it seems like it's pretty open and shut, right? Mm-hmm. But Raymond Fowler chose to ignore that and ignore all of this, that all of this stuff is easily explained by a condition caused by falling off a ladder. And instead published his findings in his book, The Allagash Abductions, Undeniable Evidence of Alien Intervention, in 1993. The book featured an introduction by Bud Hopkins, who was a friend of Fowler's and himself a huge proponent of using hypnotic memory regression to recover buried memories in abductions. A year later, the Allagash Four were featured in an episode of Unsolved Mysteries about aliens. And Unsolved claimed that the 4 men never recounted their testimonies, saying, "The 4 men have never backed down." That was my Unsolved Mysteries voice.
That's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Could use a little work, but it's all right.
Well, that statement was true until 2016. When Jessica Potila sat down in an interview with Chuck Rack for The County, a magazine out of Bangor. Chuck painted a very different picture and said, quote, I don't call it a hoax, just brilliant storytelling. It's not the truth, but I have to admire the storytelling abilities of these guys. Remember, Chuck Rack is the guy who was like, I don't know, maybe I've been influenced. Chuck Rack was also the guy who, when the aliens were allegedly, interacting with his genitals, he was like, it's fine. Doesn't bother me all that much. He went on to explain what really happened that night in the woods. First, regarding their alleged bonfire, which we said should have burned for hours, but was burned out by the time they finished their canoe trip. And we had a lot of theories about this. Do you guys remember kind of what you were thinking about it?
Yeah.
What's that?
We thought it burned too fast, or EJ said they probably just made it too hot and it burned really quickly. I feel like that was the most plausible one to me.
Yeah, I'm ready to be proven confidently incorrect by Matt here.
Well, there's a piece of it that you don't quite know yet. But First off, Chuck said, those logs that they used on the fire, they were maybe 3 inches. He said, quote, some of them could have been almost 3.5 inches. That's the biggest they could have been. And most of them were smaller. And as such, in that condition, those pieces of wood would have burned very quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all kindling, basically.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They didn't have big, like when you think of logs, you think of like big honking pieces. They didn't really have that as part of their fire.
Who really does, though, in the woods? Like, who's got, like, split logs ready to go in the woods?
Yeah, you would need to cut down an entire tree.
Yeah, most of the
No?
time.
Yeah.
Or like find a branch or something. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but that's a good point.
Yeah, it's not something you just come across most of the time.
It's going to be kindling. It's going to be a pile of sticks.
And if you do find a tree that's been felt like, knocked over by wind or something like that, and you can get those pieces, it's probably already decaying enough that it's not going to burn real well.
It might not be in the
it's
best
going to be
condition.
damp. Yeah.
Okay.
But then Chuck dropped a bombshell. For years, the Allagash Four had always claimed that they had been sober during these events. On the Joan Rivers show, Jim Weiner swore up and down that they hadn't even been drinking. And Charlie Foltz went on record claiming that the 4 of them carried in 8 beers total. 8 beers between the 4 of them. They had 1 on separate nights. 1 beer, even 2 beers in one night per guy is not enough to alter all of their perceptions, right? Mm-hmm. But Chuck Rack told the county that they'd actually been smoking hash. He said, quote, I remember Jack brought some Afghan temple ball with him to share with the rest of us.
Nice.
Yeah. We were definitely stoned when we went out on the lake just before we got that sighting.
Hell yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's a real party. Oh my God.
I mean, I'm proud of them, and they should have absolutely been doing that. But like, now, everything's out the window now.
Yeah.
Okay.
You stared at a light in the sky? Could have been anything. Could have been a normal little star, just a bright star, just sitting up there.
So I had never heard of an Afghan temple ball before, but it is a traditional form of hashish originating from Afghanistan, dating back to the 13th century. It is a circular ball, and they are known for their resinous texture and high potency, thanks to super concentrations of trichomes. They allegedly hit very hard, last a long time, and I would imagine provide a very unique experience when you're consuming them all alone in the middle of the Allagash Wilderness.
What I wouldn't give to get in a time machine and party with the Afghans in the 1200s with
Oh my God.
with an Afghan temple ball. Well, how fucking fun would that be? Probably not that fun.
I don't know. It was crazy back then. Like,
I don't know. Was the Golden Horde, had they reached there yet? Because that was a bad time.
that was a bad time.
If it was pre
Wasn't great.
Genghis Khan, then party down.
Party down.
I wouldn't mind getting in a time machine and partying with the Allagash Four and their Afghan temple ball in the middle of the Allagash Wilderness.
I think that'd be really
I think that'd
fun.
be cool.
I'd be down for that too. Yes.
And look, I'm not saying, and I would never say that cannabis or hashish makes you hallucinate, and I'm not postulating that at all. But here's what happened, right? not only had the fire not been as large as they initially explained, the guys likely lost some time on the water during their trip. You know, as we've discussed, they were looking at Mercury, which was in its furthest east elongation at that time of year. They stared at it obsessively for a while. Then they canoed back. They found their fire died down. They realized they'd been out on the water way longer than they had planned. But that all makes sense if they'd been perceiving time differently while altered. They'd been suffering from couch lock, or in this case, canoe lock.
Also, what I want to say is, I mean, we don't know this, but if you're high, you could think, oh man, we built this huge fire. And you did not. You built a normal fire out of kindling.
Yes. Yes.
Like,
I will always, I'm a kid of the 90s. I will always love the scene in Wayne's World. I think it was Wayne's World where they get high and they're in the car and they get pulled over and the cop's like, do you know how fast you've been driving? And they were like, yeah, you know, like maybe I was going 5 miles over the speed limit, 10 miles over the speed limit. Like you were going 5 miles per hour. It's the best. I will say, however, I will jump in and say, according to drugs.com, it can cause hallucinations.
How about that?
I did some reading on it. It makes you kind of lose time, too. Your sense of time gets funky, and you can hallucinate.
yeah, I mean, I was also going to say, like, I know that just generally, like, regular THC doesn't make you hallucinate, but this one time, a friend had given us some weed brownies and we put them on ice cream, and my partner and I definitely was seeing colors.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
So I didn't hallucinate quite in that I wasn't seeing like things that weren't there, but there were like auras around everything, and I was like, I gotta go to bed. So
Yeah.
I'm just saying, even if you aren't smoking this like Afghan stuff, you can definitely get yourself in a weird place.
Yeah, and the thing about hash that I read too is that it's got a higher concentration of THC than regular cannabis, and its main effect is that Delta 9 that you can probably get anywhere. It's kind of an unregulated drug on the market right now that we can get, and I believe that it's that component within the plant that gives hash its more potent effects. From what I read preliminarily, and I'm sorry I'm not an expert on this, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but that's what I read, at least, to be true.
Wait, so like I don't want to spoil the landing, but like, so they were high as shit,
Right.
and then one of their friends got sick, and
Yes.
that's all that happened.
And
Two very normal things.
Yeah, Katie has now summarized the last 4 episodes in like 4 words.
Yeah, that's the episode, folks. Thanks for listening.
But no, you're right though, Katie, because this is critical. It's the genesis of the entire story. All of their later recollections, the abductions, the medical procedures, they all came from the flawed methods of the MUFON men. But if Chuck Rack's testimony is true, that means that they were never abducted from the lake because they'd only been there getting high. They never saw a spaceship. They likely saw Mercury during a drug trip, and everything that came after was made up, implanted false memories. It explains their lost time, which is where that alien abduction supposedly took place. So, why did Chuck Rack stay quiet for decades? In his own words, he said, quote, "We were compelled to stay together, all speculating that this thing could go into the millions of dollars for each of us."
Oh, damn.
And then said, "We made very little."
Oh.
And I think Jim and Jack Weiner had really convinced themselves that something happened too. Jim in particular, because it helped to justify his night terrors, his sleep paralysis, and his medical conditions as something otherworldly rather than something as mundane as an accident on a ladder. I mean, you really don't want to believe that your health is so fragile that falling off a ladder can alter the scope of your health, all of it, for the rest of your life.
It's also just dull. Like,
Yeah.
There's something about like long-term medical crisis. You want answers. You don't want to believe that you're just unlucky and it's boring and it's easily explained and it's a drag. Like, it's much more fun to believe that it could be, there's purpose behind your pain. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just very compelling. And I don't blame him at all, honestly, for wanting to believe that.
Yeah, it makes it seem like there's an intentionality behind it instead of just the randomness of the universe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you were chosen in some way, and like this is a bad consequence, but something special happened to you in order for this to happen. And it's like, no.
Yeah. Chuck Rack's confession was met with vitriol from the other 3 alleged abductees. Jim Weiner slandered Chuck, claimed that he was an alcoholic, and called the confession a, quote, inebriated indiscretion. He believed that Chuck was trying to capitalize on their case and make money, saying, quote, his proposal was that all 4 of us refute the professional handling of the case by Raymond Fowler, Tony Constantino, and MUFON, thereby creating controversy, which was, in Mr. Rack's mind, exactly what the media and public crave and pay for.
No, they don't. They don't pay for the boring story. They pay for the exciting story.
Yeah.
If anything, Chuck was putting to bed any hope of making any kind of money off of this.
Yeah. Yeah, they were never going to make money off this side of it. They made more money when they ended up on like unsolved mysteries and shit. Jim and Jack and Charlie all took polygraph tests to prove that their side of the story was true, and they all passed. But, you know, it's worth pointing out that a polygraph just shows that you believe what you're saying, not that it's true. And,
Right.
they all believe
You
what
are
they were
not
saying.
lying because you believe what you're saying to be true.
Right. Raymond Fowler, in the wake of the County article, noted that Chuck never seemed like he fully admitted what happened to him. He believed denying the event was Chuck's way of grappling with his anger about not being able to remember what happened to him on the spaceship. But of course, by this point, Raymond Fowler actually needed the Allagash abductions to support his own abduction narrative. Finding out that their encounter was a lie or an implanted memory would call his own experiences into question, which was something that Fowler simply couldn't handle. And it also invalidated his entire body of research stretching back decades all the way to the Betty Andreessen case. At the end of the day, the Allagash abductions hinges on whether you trust Raymond Fowler's subjects and methods. But here's the thing. Hypnotic memory regression was proved to be bullshit even before Fowler was performing it on the Allagash Four. Fowler himself was a biased researcher out to prove that his own theories about his assumed abduction were true. And in that quest, he implanted memories in the minds of the Weiner brothers and Charlie Foltz, not to mention Betty Andreessen a decade before. The more similarities he found, the more he looked for, and the more he found everywhere he searched. The whole investigation of the Allagash abductions was a big exercise in confirmation bias. Here's what really happened that night, although, Katie, I believe you've succinctly summed it up very well already. But 4 guys went on an extended camping trip in the woods. While there, they got high, lost some time, got confused, and probably a little bit obsessed with the planet Mercury, which was particularly bright during that season. Years later, one of the guys suffered a head trauma and started having hallucinations and sleep paralysis, which were totally common side effects of his injury. But he became convinced that he had been abducted by aliens, and instead of trusting his doctor, he found someone who was willing to support his fringe theories. Using flawed and discredited techniques like hypnotic memory regression, a false memory was implanted in 3 of the guys' recollections. They'd been abducted by aliens during their camping trip. Once they all started comparing their implanted memories, all the facts lined up because they'd all been sourced from the same place, which was a group of untrained researchers that included someone who desperately wanted to prove that he too had been abducted and that his methods and research had scientific validity. In this way, the Allagash abductions does actually stand as a critical case in the field of ufology. But it's not that it proves the abduction narrative or sheds light on some hidden secret or something like that. Instead, we should use it as a cautionary tale. It is the story of what happens when researchers lose the plot, when critical thinking goes out the window, and when someone wants to believe something so badly that they will ignore all the red flags, all the warning signs, and all the criticism that gets lobbied against them. It's a warning against going out in the dark wilderness of research without the light of reason and skepticism. And that's the story of the Allagash abductions.
I just want to hear Afro Man's version of this story. I got abducted by aliens because I got high.
I really feel like this was fun because they were just really fucking high. Hasn't been a conclusion yet. And I'm surprised that it's not the answer in more like I saw a ghost or I got abducted by alien stories.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Because, you know, we've all been there, allegedly.
You know, my dad, there's a period of time, I don't know exactly when it was, but my dad and my uncle went to the Okefenokee Swamp on a canoeing camping trip for a while. And he only told me about it when I was younger. And so he was like, oh yeah, we went camping and whatever. And now I'm very aware that they absolutely, this is probably the 70s, you know, around the same time. Dude, they went to the Okefenokee Swamp and got high as shit. And I wish that he was still around, that I could talk to him and be like, what was that like out there, man?
Yeah.
What were you really doing?
Yeah.
Also, to be very honest, I would never go to the middle of nowhere and get high. That would freak me out.
Yeah, dude.
Yes.
I like being at home in my own four walls. Like, that's cool. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dude, actually, no, I'm not going to say where it was. I was out in the wilderness around a lot of people. Like, it was one of those setups where there's lots of campsites. And, yes, that did happen. A space trip did happen. And, oh my God, I overdid it. And it was not fun. Yeah. And I felt very, very vulnerable. And there were people all around. And it was just not okay.
Yeah, you went to the moon. Dude.
I went to the moon and I did not enjoy it.
Also, you know, that this is something we didn't really talk about because, you know, I don't want to speculate on what their particular drug trip was like. But there is, sometimes you can alter yourself into that state and then you feel uncomfortable being in that altered state. And it makes you feel like, oh my God, you get a little paranoid and not like, I don't know. I know that that's like a standard fucking.
But it's
thing,
true.
But
you get paranoid because I
Mm-hmm.
think maybe EJ, you described it better, like with different adjectives. Like you can start to feel vulnerable. Mm-hmm. If you get too high, your body starts to feel incredibly uncomfortable and like on edge and nervous. And like, if you don't like it, for me, sometimes if that happens, like, I'm just like, okay, I just need to go to bed because I'm just going to shut this shit down, you know? Mm-hmm. But like, if you're out in the middle of the water on a lake, you can't do that. You have to get back, you know?
Yeah.
So maybe paranoid isn't the exact word, but it's like you can start to have a lot of uncomfortable feelings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like vulnerable. I think vulnerable is a good, you feel unsafe, you know?
Yeah.
And dude, the last place I want to feel unsafe is in the middle of the fucking woods where you have to self-rescue, you know?
Yeah. That's all I got.
As you go on your camping trips this summer, just be safe out there, you know, take care of each other and use with moderation. That's the lesson that we've learned from the Allagash Four.
My biggest lesson was like, be patient. Like it won't kick in right away. You know, like don't take some and then 20 minutes in say, this is fucking lame. I'm still not high. And then take a bunch more. Don't do those things. That was third tier fun.
Third tier fun, exactly. Yeah.
I actually think that this is third tier fun when you get so high on hash and you see aliens in the middle of a lake. That's third tier fun.
Type 3 fun. We've identified type 3 fun. Yeah.
Type 3 fun.
Type 3
Sorry,
fun.
I was thinking about it wrong.
No, it's pretty great. You can almost link all of them with Close Encounters, right?
Yeah.
Because Close Encounters of the Third Kind is when you make contact with aliens. So yeah, type 3 fun.
And with that,
that's great.
And with that,
goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for listening. If you want to show your support, head over to slayingmonsterspodcast.com. Click on the support us button at the top of the page and consider leaving a donation or becoming a supporter there. It's also where we have our merch store if you want to wear some stuff or get a coffee mug or something cool like that. And yeah, until next time, be safe out there.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Next time, you find yourself in a lonely lighthouse off the coast of Scotland. The keeper's beds are unmade, chairs overturned, 3 meals uneaten. With creeping dread, you realize there is no sign of the men who spent their last month here. The trio of lighthouse keepers have vanished without a trace. Thanks for listening to Slaying Monsters, the 40 in History podcast. If you like the podcast, there's a couple ways you can show your support. You can tell your friends, you can leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform, or you can head over to slayingmonsterspodcast.com and click on the Support Us button to leave a donation. For questions, suggestions, and other feedback, reach out to us, slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com, and stay up to date by following us on socials at Slaying Monsters Podcast. Your support helps us grow, and we are truly grateful to have our listeners and community.